Welcome, everyone, to Last Man Standing, episode 36. The season is cruising along. We've got 1 week left. Congratulations if you're still alive in Circa Survivor. Congratulations if you're still alive in your Survivor pool that's non-Circa related. My name is Tony Farmer. He is Ryan Hogue. Last man standing in the 2003 NFL Draft. We're here to preview all of the games on the Week 18 slate, talk a little bit of Survivor strategy, but we also have a very special guest on the show who we're going to be bringing in a minute here. NFLWISEGUYS, who was the talk of Survivor really throughout the contest. I can't wait for the documentary to come out because I imagine they're going to be a big part of this film, especially the midway and the latter part of the season. Before we bring NFLWISEGUYS on the screen, Ryan, where are you? How you doing, my friend?
Well, a lot better than the last episode. Not recovering. I'm still recovering, but not, moments after a big motorcycle accident. But I'm down in Florida still. I head to Vegas this weekend and looking forward to meeting up with the documentary folks again and then taking the Raiders one last game and seeing what we can do at the end of our season. So where are you, Tony?
I'm still in Austin, Texas, sitting in my living room here, just a different background. But I want to ask you, I know you mentioned your accident last week. That was pretty fresh, last episode, like minutes after it seemed like you were on the screen. Are you sore? You got bruises, scrapes? I mean, where are you at?
Oh, I'm a disaster, to be honest with you. And
really?
Yeah, my whole side of my body is completely, like, I don't know what degree burns, but it's the worst road rash it's still completely raw, like right now. So I'm bandaged up. My stomach's bruised, my hamstring's bruised. I think I got a little nerve damage in my finger, but I'm alive. And, so new year, new me, right?
This would be a good opportunity to challenge you in a tennis match. Now that you're all banged up, I might have a chance.
Tony, the fact that you even mentioned you don't play tennis. And while we're on it, I think everybody needs to know Tony and I were in a year-long picks competition.
Oh, here we go.
And we didn't even make it to the end of the year because I have officially I've outdistanced Tony by so many picks he can't catch me. So he and I have a significant amount of money on it, and he's now had to pay me, which he did. Thank you, Tony.
A significant amount of money? Is $100 a significant amount of money?
And I appreciate it, Tony. And so just so you know, professional handicapper, this guy, and, former player, but there's a reason. I was an academic All-American in college. Tony was not. He was the mascot at Ball State. So
so much misinformation. We need a fact checker on this show.
That was hating on me or my picks. I destroyed Tony, and he's got to eat crow with that.
Ryan, congratulations. You did beat me in a pick'em contest, but how did you do in Survivor this year? How much money did you make in Survivor?
Well, Tony, I did the same as you. Lost. we both lost.
I sold an entry for 5 figures, buddy. We don't have to go into all that. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and bring our special guest in. Nobody wants to hear us bicker. NFLWISEGUYS, Phil, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you on the show. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing very well, very well. I'm here in Jacksonville Beach. Good to see you guys. Feel like we've seen each other a lot, even though we hadn't met, just because we following your show and appreciate what you guys do and building the contest popularity.
And for those that don't know, Phil, tell us who NFLWISEGUYS is. Not just you. It's you and is it a couple buddies? And how long have you guys been collaborating on contests?
Me and a couple buddies, 2 guys, and we've been collaborating on contests for a long while now. We used to do the Westgate Super Contest is where we started. We came over to this contest and love this one a lot more than the Survivor pick. Like the Survivor competition a lot more than the weekly picks, especially when you get into the thousands of people. It's just hard to handicap against thousands versus this has a lot more strategy and I think a lot more handicapping mindset. So we appreciate it, and it's a fun road.
And are you guys just sports enthusiasts, or grew up together, or are you professional handicappers? Like, what's your background?
I'm actually an attorney, and another one of our guys is a pharmacist, and another guy does real estate. But we're all avid sports players, or sports handicappers, and play sports. Our kids all play sports, so we're family guys too. But really one of those that we've always been collaborating in the handicapping world and enjoy sports all together.
I met the other 2/3 of Wise Guys. It was for Thanksgiving. I was in Vegas, and I was in the little special VIP area of Derek Stevens, and the camera crew was over there and everything. I hear Tony Farmer. And I'm like, who the heck is he? He's like, it's NFL Wise Guys. I'm like, oh, it's such a cool part of this competition where we've got this community that's being built now. You know, Survivor Atlas has the Discord channel where people are talking every week, and the tailgates every week. And this show, people are commenting. In fact, we got some comments rolling in now. But that's one of my favorite parts about this competition. As it grows, this community of people grows, and then you see the same names on the leaderboard every year and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to see. One of those great people, by the way, is House. He checks in and says, Happy New Year. Let's go. House, by the way, had the same very similar options last week, choosing between Bucks and Colts. He was smart. He went Bucks, passed on the Colts. The move that I wish I had made with my team and my partners, still alive, has maybe the Colts available this week if he wants to against Jacksonville. It'd be interesting to see which way he goes. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Phil, is about that decision-making process. There's 3 of you guys on this team. Do you guys do a vote through text every week? Is it sort of one person with veto power and 2 other people chime in? How does your team come to a decision every week?
Very much like most people probably follow the Survivor Sweat guys with Mike and them. So very similar to us. We're in constant communication all week. Like to do a lot of our own handicapping before, just to not influence each other's thoughts.
Yep.
And then really a lot of discourse and thoughts and strategy discussions looking forward, at least a decent amount. You never know with injuries or where teams are going, but it's not a vote per se. It's never been something where we're all like-minded, strategy-minded. That's why we do the contest together. It's usually strategic, and we talk about pros and cons of each of our number 1 or number 2 selections and kind of talk those out, and then ultimately just come to a team decision. It's not one of those where we vote, but it's a call, and sometimes it's a late night or early morning call. It's Saturday morning where do we like this injury news, follow line movement, things like that, where we might come off a play. But it definitely is one where it's just constant discourse all week. And this contest, as you guys know and talk about all the time, it literally consumes you the later you get. When that number keeps dwindling, it comes to the forefront of your thoughts. Early on, not as much, but later on, it's all you think about and look at.
Have there been instances, Phil, where all 3 of you are steadfast in going a direction and they're all 3 different directions?
Not so much. I think the difference has been in teams to save and not use. Like, we'll like different games, but it creates different paths, right? So I think that's one of those where we work together the best we can to strategize and ultimately come to a team decision, because it is a team game for us as a team strategy, and we always want to be lockstep and on the same page, and never want one person to feel like, damn, if we went that way, I didn't get. If somebody on our team thought, oh, we lost because of the other guys, you pushed so hard that we went your path, and now I'd still be in it. It's never like that. We all have to be on board with the decision, and we're all really good friends. So it's one of those where it's fun to collaborate.
And you mentioned that strategy. You guys were kind of known in the community for not being afraid to go all in. There was most weeks you put all 10 or all 6 or whatever entries you had on the same team. Can you talk to us a little bit about that strategy and why you sort of took that approach?
The approach for us is it's a week to week in the NFL and any given Sunday, right? So it is hard as hell. As everybody knows, there was 14,000 people in this thing, and we're down to 18. And we still got another week of football left, right? And so it is hard as hell to pick 19 winners, 20 winners after next week. So the diversification, depending on the week for us, if you diversify every week, now you got to pick 40 winners if I've got 2 sheets, or if I've got 6 sheets and I want to diversify and go 2-2-2. Now I've got to pick 60 winners depending on the weeks. So it's one of those, we're not taking in diversification. If we feel really good about a couple of picks, and we'll talk about that, diversification is on our mind. But one of those where if we've got a strategy and a path that we like, our strategy has been, and we don't have any reservations about, I guess, going all in, because that's the path we were going to take. And it lines us up and sets us up to where that's the sheet. We all handicap games. This is what we feel really good about. Let's advance. And that was part of our strategy in this one.
At what point, Phil, at the start of the season, do you look ahead versus just going week one? We just want to survive in advance. We don't necessarily know the teams. Cincinnati, for example, we thought that was kind of a shoe-in over New England week one. At what point do you look towards, and maybe take out Thanksgiving and Christmas, because obviously those are teams that everybody's kind of mindful if they're familiar with the thing. But it seemed like you guys were on, just like you said, kind of a week-to-week survive in advance. At what point do you look long-term during the season?
I think mainly the Thanksgiving and Christmas, like you just said, Ryan, is important. So we did our best to hold a majority of those teams back from Thanksgiving. Christmas, we locked in, as everybody could see early. We used every other team except Kansas City and Pittsburgh because our strategy, we didn't think early on in the season with the quarterback situation there, we didn't see Pittsburgh being the team that they became. So we thought, hey, absent a Mahomes injury, hopefully we're feeling great on Christmas, but maybe injuries, shit happens, so we wanted to have Pittsburgh there. So we had both sides as an option to burn. If we had that option, or if there was an injury, we can go all in on KC or Pittsburgh the other way. But we locked in that game early on in the season. As far as other teams or other strategies, it vary week to week until Thanksgiving. I mean, this contest is, I think the Thanksgiving mark, there's still a ton of contest after Thanksgiving, but in our head, the contest really starts at Thanksgiving. So that was where we're just week to week eyeballing a couple of key matchups in between that Thanksgiving to Christmas mark. You want to save teams that once you get a feel for the season. But as you know, guys, a team in week 1, week 2, week 3 is not going to be the same team that you see in week 12, 13, 14. So it's hard to say, I'm saving X team for week 13, and that's my pick. That's what I'm locking in. So you want to save a couple options. So we're always looking, even in those key weeks, look to make sure you have a couple of options, not tie yourself into one.
Phil, can you talk to us about sort of the emotional roller coaster that is Survivor? And I mean, I feel like your entry personified that roller coaster, because you were involved in that gnarly Commanders Cowboys game. That was probably the craziest game of the year. You had several entries get knocked out on that. Then you had that run of like 3 games in a row where, forgive me for wording it this way, but you guys got pretty lucky, and there were a couple overtime games in there. And then you got knocked out very recently. We appreciate you coming on the show because that loss is still fresh. It's hard for me to talk about my loss. It's only a couple days ago as well. So just talk to me about the psychological aspect of Survivor.
I mean, let's circle back. I know we had luck, and I think you need luck to win this thing, because you're always going to have a couple of games where you're on and you're like, damn, we're out. And the next thing you know, you're back. And that's the NFL. Every game you could be out, and now it becomes a game or whatever. Even look at Arizona State playing today, and that's college. But that being said, Thanksgiving, we were frickin' 2 field goals away from winning the thing. Essentially, we had
good point.
All our sheets, and there would have been 8 left when we were on Green Bay, and so that was it was very hard for us to pick ourselves up after that, because that's where we felt like, damn, we got to keep going. And that was our chance, really a good chance to get through this thing. And 2 ridiculous plays, and now everybody's still in, and we got to ride the roller coaster. So that I think with the emotional roller coaster, and what I've told a lot of people, and we would share our picks with our friends, and kind of like you said, Tony, people text you and are like, they're riding this along with us, and their heartbeats are as high as ours for these games because they're just cheering you on, right? But I think what makes the contest very difficult for me and my friends that I do it with is you find yourself needing to cheer for bad teams to win to get people eliminated. And bad teams are bad teams. So you're cheering for the Bears to win. And now that they bring you up to the end and you're like, yes, we've got this. And they're just a bad team that loses. And you're like, how does this, the Carolina Panthers, classic example, week after week after week, should have won. And then we were on them with the Bucs, should have won and didn't. But that was 3 weeks in a row where they had the game there and should have knocked people out the 2 weeks prior and didn't. So it's one of those where bad teams find ways to lose games. And in Survivor, you're picking against bad teams, right? Like that's the matchups you're looking at. So it is a roller coaster on both ways. It's a roller coaster on the games you're in, and it's a roller coaster on the games you're not in. So it's a fun experience, and we enjoy every minute of it just like you guys do.
Now, Phil, if you guys would have gone through and you would have been you had 2 selections out of 20 people remaining, had you decided what you're going to do? Were you going to go on the same game and split it? Were you going to go both entries on the Colts or the Bucs, or were you going to go 1-1? Had you figured that out?
So we eyeballed that Pittsburgh-Kansas City matchup, and absent an injury, we were burning that week. We liked taking our risk early before on higher spreads, knowing the coin flip games on Christmas. So we were burning a sheet on Christmas Day. And taking
meaning one on Pittsburgh, one on
Pittsburgh, and one on Kansas City. So we'd have had one through on that particular day. We come back. We were on Atlanta all week until the Penix decision. That's really where we're still struggling. We had 3 home teams lined up. We were going to go Atlanta, Buffalo, and then this week we'd have either probably been on Arizona or Indy or on the Colts, but most likely the Colts at home, ending on 3 home games. So that's where we're still butthurt in coming off that decision. Penix was probably an upgrade, or at least a neutral to the way Cousins was playing, but the unknown scared us, just like you guys talked about on your show before that week, and we came off it and took a road team. In the game, we still felt like we should have won. That James Conner injury hurt us bad.
Yep.
And so, but either way, that you've got to take the risk. And for instance, if we'd have went Buffalo and took the safe route, we'd have been on the Colts with you, Tony, and we'd have been out on the Colts. So it was Atlanta now. If we'll be on the Colts probably this Sunday, if the Colts lose, we'd have been out, because with 3 of us, to be candid with you, there wasn't a lot of room to hedge when you've got 18 people still left, or 34 before this week. You got 34 people, and then we're splitting ours 3 ways. It's not like it has been in the past where it's down to single digits at this time, and you're dealing with a significant amount of money. So in the scheme of things, in the scheme of $14 million, not to say 200,000 that we're or whatever each, if $600,000 a sheet isn't a lot of money, but in the scheme of a $14 million contest, it's really not. But
it makes sense. Phil, I know you said that you guys were doing like the super contest before you got over to Survivor. So is this your first year doing Survivor, or had you done it years past too? This is third
year. Yeah. We had the same strategy the first 2 seasons in being very aggressive with our picks. And we got knocked out after week 6 or 7 last year in that same strategy that we talk about, in having more sheets in the first half of the contest to get through to the more difficult second half of the contest. So everybody can probably eyeball that same strategy next year from our perspective. But it was funny, even in the beginning of this season, we diversified a couple of weeks at the beginning where we went 8-2 on I think a week, or 6-2-2. And the only games we ever lost were our diversified weeks. Like we always lost. If we took 2 sheets and put them on another play to hedge per se, we lost. And it was like, so that's where we always said, like, going with our handicapping and finding the game we like. That's just our strategy, and has been our strategy, and probably will continue to be our strategy.
Did you guys sell any of your entries or a percentage?
We sold a percentage. Once that major carnage happened and it got down, we sold a portion of all of our sheets that we had left. So we pay for our entries for a couple years to come, which is nice. And always nice to lock in a little equity, can play a little more loose, and you don't feel like you walk away with nothing in this thing, which was good. So that I think the Survivor Sweat, I think that's a great aspect of this contest in being able to justify even buying 10 entries now. At least I can ship off an entry early on in the contest if there's a lot of carnage and make some of my money back and still have a lot of action in the game while taking my investment off the table. So that was always a good option to have.
Yeah, Survivor Sweat's been an absolute game changer, and we love working with them. It's really changed the dynamics completely. Phil, I picked up on what I think was a little bit of – do you have a poker background? When I heard you say playing loose, do you play poker at all?
Not much. No,
okay.
not enough to talk about it on here. No, I stick to sports.
All right, fair enough. My last question for you, Phil. What do you feel like you've learned, whether it's from this season or any of your 3 seasons that you've been doing Survivor? Any pieces of advice that you'd give someone if they're going to be playing this contest for the first time next year? Maybe something you learned from this year, anything like that?
Not to stress. I find myself getting overly stressed on cheering these other teams to lose way too much. It really does consume you, even from a Sunday night to a Monday night, and all these games throughout your whole weekend. And it's one of those where I got to do a better job of focus on your entries. If you get through, the math's going to hopefully work out in the end. People are going to get eliminated. You don't know which games that's going to be, but it's going to happen. But the mental side of this thing is tough, man. It's tough when you're in it. It's a grind, and it really does consume you, like we talk about. So it sometimes is not as enjoyable. Like our win should be exciting, and sometimes you take away from that win by focusing on all these other teams to lose. And so that's what I would say is that the advice is focus on your win and advancing and enjoying that, and try to relish that as much as you can, instead of you're on a 1:00 game and you won, and now at 4:00 the number 1 pick wins. You get pissed off and your weekend's ruined because you're like, damn, 100 people could have been out and now they're not off the field, whatever. And you're talking more about the loss than you are about your own advancement. So that would
be you got by, you survived, you got through, and you're grumpy. I know exactly what you're talking about. That happened a couple times. You almost emotionally feel like you lost because only 2 people got knocked out this week.
Which was a crazy run this time to go. The 4 weeks we did with 4 people being eliminated was absolutely wild. That's never happened in this that ever. But that was a mind-blowing run there where we kept going. There's going to be carnage this week. Oh, nope. Carnage this week. Nope. And it never came. So it's led to now the most ever to really, I think the most ever is going to for sure finish this thing, absent some wild finishes here in week 18.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, thanks. Ryan, did you have anything else? Any other questions?
No, appreciate you taking your time, Phil. Good luck to you in the future, NFL Wise Guys, and hopefully we're on the podium with you next year.
Yeah, hope so. Hey, thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Appreciate you, brother. All right, good stuff there, Ryan. That was a great interview. Great to hear his perspective and their philosophy on how they go about picking games. Really impressive run there for NFL Wise Guys. Like I said, they were the talk of the contest throughout it. It was like, what are these guys going to do with their 6 picks? What are these guys going to do? They've got the most picks left, so kudos to them on a hell of a run. Ryan, really, let's go ahead. Go ahead.
And I would say really interesting. I think on another show, Tony, you and I can do a deep dive into their, innate strategy, because it differs from yours. It differs from mine and my mindset as a football player and like how I know how every week works. But it certainly made me pause and think, I guess my way might not be the only way. So I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they proved it. The proof was in the pudding this year with how far they got. I think you just have to have the balls. You have to have the guts and say, you know what? If we go down, we go down. We went down swinging with our best pick, and you've got to be comfortable with losing that amount of money. And I think that enables you to make moves like that. So again, kudos to them. Ryan, before we get going, I'm going to quickly go over. There are still entries available in the Survivor Sweat marketplace, even though we're 1 week from finishing. 66% of an entry is available for almost $500,000, $475,000. $17,500 entry gets you 2%. And then $14,100 will also get you 2%. $14,500 will get you 2%. And then the last two here, $8,000 will get you 1% or $8,600 for 1%. So this is a way that you can get really close to holding a check. Because like I said, Jeffrey Benson has already put out that advertisement for the check ceremony. So if you got the money out there, this is an opportunity to get up on the podium, enjoy that excitement. And hey, maybe there's a big upset next week and the value of your entry goes up unexpectedly. So head on over to Survivor Sweat. We love them. They are more than a marketplace. They also have great strategy articles over there, etc. So please do check them out. Yeah, that way. There we go. There, you see that logo up in the corner there. Ryan, I want to pull this up for you. This is from Survivor Atlas. This is that middle column is what you want to look at. Those are the entries hold on, let me back up. If teams want to pick the best available based on the point spread, these are the number of people that have that option. In other words, 8 people, the Falcons are their best available team as a 7.5 point favorite. 2 people, as we just heard from House who chimed in, he's one of 2 people that have the Packers available. 5 people have the Buccaneers available as their best, and 3 people have the Colts available as their best. So this is different than the entry count, which we've shown before on this show. This is period, who has which teams available. This, I think it's a little more granular, a little bit more detailed, and let you know if someone wants to take the best available based on the point spread, this is who they're likely to take in these situations. So with this in mind, let's go ahead and go through the Week 18 slate. There's a couple games we're not going to spend much time on because, one, there'll be nobody on those teams because those teams are literally burned already, or it's just really obvious nobody's going to make a crazy decision and put their huge entry on 2 teams that are absolutely terrible. But for the games that have a little more meaning, like the ones we just had on the screen, we'll spend a little bit more time on. So let's go ahead and jump into this, Ryan. Ravens, Browns. This is a Saturday game. Let me pull this up because I don't think anybody has the Ravens available, actually. Yeah, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. But the Ravens are going to win this game, right, Ryan?
I like the Browns.
Wait, to win or with the points?
I'm totally joking.
You're messing with me.
Just kidding.
All
new
right.
year, new me. New year, new me. New year, new Jameis. Yeah, I mean, it's 17.5 points. I mean, that's agreed. But, I mean, Baltimore's essentially having the opportunity to set the tone going into the playoffs. They can win the division by winning. They're playing one of their rivals, right? They know that Pittsburgh's on their heels, and they want to give Pittsburgh no reason to play that next game. And so I find it exceptionally hard to think that they would slip up here. Defense travels, running game travels, and Baltimore's trending upwards on their defense finally, and obviously their running game is the best in the league. So I don't know that Cleveland, especially with their uncertain quarterback situation, DTR is just not, he's just a guy, he's a plug and play kind of guy, but they don't instill a lot of fear. I'm sure they'll be feisty in the first half, but Baltimore will win by double digits.
You mentioned DTR. We may also see Bailey Zappi for the first time in a while. He may make an appearance in this one. Stefanski came out and said that don't be surprised if you see them both in that game. So moving on to a game that I think a lot more people will be interested in. Bucks versus Saints here. This pains me to talk about because if we had gotten by my group with the Colts last week, we would have taken the Bucks. Massive point spread here. This game opened as 14-point favorites for the Bucks. A little bit of sharp money came in, moved that point spread down to 13.5 last I saw it anyways. Bucks are 13.5-point favorites against the Saints. As we talked about on last week's show, the Saints have 2 offensive linemen that are on IR. They look like a team that's packing it in at this point. Division rival, though, if you had the Bucks left last week in Survivor with these monumental implications, literally potentially millions of dollars on the line, would you have any hesitation about using the Bucks here?
I mean, so I think the one thing you brought up was the fact that, it is a division battle and the Saints always play the Bucks tough. Now, I will say that was back in the days when they had Lattimore, who was kind of their alpha. I watched, obviously, the Saints play the Raiders last week. And Tony, let me tell you, I mean, the Raiders scored the second most points they had scored all year, 25, right? They gave up only 10 points. Like the Saints in the last 2 weeks have averaged 5 points a game, right? They had 0 against Packers and 10 against the Raiders. And yeah, I don't see a team that, you know, I'm not going to say they've given up because, you know, they blocked an extra point. Anytime a team blocks an extra point or a field goal, that tells me, you know what, usually those are the plays that you see guys kind of mail it in. So this team has absolutely not mailed it in, but they're just so depleted. Like all of their playmakers, Tony, Chris Olave, Taysom Hill, Kamara, I mean, Derek Carr, like all of their guys, you know, they have one good rusher, Cam Hayward. I mean, not Cam Hayward, but Cam Jordan on the defensive line. They have one good linebacker in Davis, and they have one good defensive back in Matthew. And Matthew's kind of getting a little long in the tooth. But yeah, I would not have hesitation just because I feel like the Bucs will play with their hair on fire. They know that the Falcons slipped up and gave them a great opportunity. Now, you got to understand, though, there's some emotion going on in New Orleans, right? I mean, 15 people died. And the last time, you know, there was Hurricane Katrina, the first game back, Steve Gleason with the block punt. They've been known to absolutely galvanize around, you know, a horrific event. And so I'm sure there will be some passion in that crowd. I think the Bucs will probably travel pretty well to that game. So, you know, again, it's a division. I don't like, especially at the end of the year, I don't like division matchups. But I would feel pretty good. I'd feel like 67% for the Bucs in this game. I like other games, but again, at this point, you don't have a lot of options.
Right. Absolutely. One guy we know who is going to be playing with his hair on fire is going to be Mike Evans. A lot's been made this week. He's got $3 million on the line in incentives if he can get 5 catches and 85-ish yards, I believe, maybe 86, something like that. It's wild, man. We've seen these incentives at the end of the year, and sometimes it's like $1 million if they get 2 touchdowns, something like that. $3 million on the line. You know he's going to be extra motivated in that game. Cade Otton, not at practice today for the Bucs. Payne Durham, someone we normally wouldn't talk about, but he's the backup tight end. So it's possible the Bucs are without both tight ends in this game. That's noteworthy. Bucky Irving and Sterling Shepard limited in practice today. So just FYI on those injuries if you're planning on taking the Bucs. Don't think it's a reason to move off the Bucs, but it's certainly something to be aware of. And that point you bring up, Ryan, about that terrorist attack in New Orleans, like that is noteworthy. Again, not a reason to get off the Bucs by itself, but that's something to certainly be aware of because, I mean, we've seen teams galvanize after tragedies in their hometown many times. You referenced the Katrina with the Saints. We saw that, you know, with New York teams after 9/11. The list goes on and on. So it's very much something to be aware of. All right, moving on here. We've got Broncos against the Chiefs. It's come out that the Chiefs are going to be resting a lot of their starters here. Broncos need this game for a playoff berth. Let me go ahead and pull up our numbers here, Ryan, and see. Could anybody take Denver right now if they wanted to? No, nobody's got Denver left. So we really don't need to spend any time on this. Any thoughts on this game real quick, though?
I am not convinced Denver is going to win this game.
Really? Okay.
No, I know that Mahomes is officially out. Like they mentioned that. And Andy Reid is shrewd, but I bet he'll play his offensive line, you know, and I think he'll play, you know, some of his defensive starters. He'll sprinkle them in. You know, I think the Chiefs will probably have some struggles offensively just because, you know, they don't have as great a depth, but their defense is going to be rock solid. They're going to give Broncos fits on scoring. It's, you know, yes, I know the Broncos will be desperate and things like that, but then also Carson Wentz is desperate. Like he wants to show that he's one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league. And what better way to show it than in the snow, potential snow in Denver. And again, always be cautious betting on a game when there's, you know, weather implications. I'm seeing, you know, it might be a little warm for snow, but there's snow projected. So
do you buy the narrative that the Chiefs don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs because of that history, and that because they don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs, that may impact how they play this game here?
I mean, I think that a few guys might feel that way, but just knowing Andy Reid, like they got to beat everybody anyway. So I don't think so.
Gotcha. All right, moving on here. We saw House. I'm going to pull that comment up again. House is already declaring Green Bay all day. Me and Kevin 373 are the only ones with them. So we know House is going to be on the Packers in this game. Ryan, any reason House or Kevin 737 should be concerned about trusting Green Bay here in this spot against the Bears?
Well, I mean, the Bears at least showed up last week, and their defense really played well. They've lost how many in a row? 11 straight against the Packers? It might be more than that. I can't remember. But anytime there's that long of, layoff, I always question whether or not it's good to, because professional football, they're grown men. Also, do the Packers really have that much to play for, Tony?
This week?
They're kind of locked into the 6th seed, aren't they? I mean, I think they only can be the 6th seed.
That sounds right. I'm behind on my homework this week.
Maybe they can. There's a chance they could be the 7th seed. I think maybe Washington can catch them if they win and Green Bay loses. But here's the thing.
Yes. That is correct.
They're again, the Packers are going to most likely have to be on the road all the games. And whether you're playing they might play Philly, they might play the Rams. Again, it's 6-1, half dozen the other. I could see the Packers, playing hard for a half and then taking it easy. These are always where I'm a little nervous. If there's any chance that they might rest guys, which I think the NFL very soon is going to go to more of the, hey, we're just, doing what Sean McVay is doing and being like, I'm sitting guys. I don't care. Anytime there's that possibility, I usually want to stay away from it. And granted, you said there's only 2 people that can pick the Packers or something like that. So
2 people. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
And Christian clarifies for us. House clarifies if Washington loses and Green Bay wins, Green Bay can bump themselves up a spot in the seating here, which is good information to have. Ryan, I want to ask you a question. As a former player, as a guy who's been in numerous NFL locker rooms, when you hear Caleb Williams saying some of the stuff he's been saying lately in press conferences, like one of the more recent ones was the fans' frustration, a lot of that was from before I got here. He's not outright coming out and saying none of this is my fault, but it kind of has those undertones that these things aren't his fault. And that's always kind of been a knock on Caleb Williams, is that there's a little bit of arrogance that's exuding from him. Is that the stuff that can poison a locker room and make guys, kind of be talking about him behind his back and stuff like that? Or do you got no problem with that if you're his teammate?
I mean, that specific comment, which he has made a few of those, in the overarching history of the Bears and stuff, I don't think anybody has an issue. And the only reason anybody would potentially have an issue is if the reporters in the locker room keep bringing it up and then try to spin it so it seems like it's him versus the team. But the quarterback is supposed to be the alpha. It's supposed to be the voice box. It's supposed to be the captain of the team, right? You're essentially the you're the mouthpiece. You're the franchise for, you're a director role of a business. You can't do that. You just got to know. That's why I was like, shh. I would just put my finger over his mouth and be like, stop, just stop talking. You're not helping yourself. You're not there's no point to say that. There's just 0 point to say that. If you feel that way, fine, tell your buddies, but to go on camera, it's irresponsible. You're an ambassador for the Chicago Bears franchise and history. And if you want to generate excitement, if you want to generate revenue for yourself, if you want to generate opportunities outside of football to get on the Allstate commercials, you can't say dumb stuff like that.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, Ryan. And of course, this is speculation because you're not in the locker room now, but as a guy who's been in the locker rooms, yes or no, do you suspect that Caleb Williams' attitude has negatively impacted that Bears locker room this season? Yes or no?
I'm going to take a cop out and say I don't think it's positively impacted it.
Okay.
To say it's negatively impacted though, Tony, that's a pretty strong statement, right? But back to what I was saying, the quarterback's job is to positively impact, right? The whole reason Gardner Minshew got the job over Aiden O'Connell, right? Wasn't X's and O's. Both of those guys, like talent-wise, was like 1A and 1B. It was because the Raiders have 0 players on the offensive side that are like mouthpieces, like going to be that alpha, loud, hold people accountable. Gardner Minshew is up here when it comes to that. Aiden O'Connell is like the most docile, quiet person. He got the job single-handedly because he's willing to excite people and have a team meeting or whatever it might be, a players-only meeting, things like that. And that's important from the quarterback position, especially on a team that's younger, right? Or a team that has new ownership or new coaches, which, again, the Bears fill a lot of those or will this coming up year.
Absolutely. And the reason I'm asking these questions is related to Survivor. If you're on the Packers, you're wondering in your pros and cons reasons to take the Packers or not, can you put the Bears locker room might have a little turmoil, on that pros and cons list. So that's why I'm asking those questions, but really good insight for you there.
I have a bigger issue with DJ Moore 3 weeks ago when a person asked him in the locker room, are you starting to think about other things outside of football? He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about Cancun. He absolutely said that to a bunch of reporters. Like, who says that? That is so dumb. But again, if your quarterback, who is your leader, if he's the one that's kind of setting a precedent, it's going to permeate onto guys being like, I just don't want to get hurt. Let's get on to next season.
Did DJ Moore have another comment earlier in the year too? Maybe when he was asked about Eberflus, I feel like there might have been another one where a reporter asked him something about the leadership from his coach, and he didn't deny it or something to that effect. Yeah. He seems like if you're a reporter, that's a good guy to ask because you're going to get a real answer.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
I appreciate that.
And I think he also threw his quarterback. He mouthed what does he do? Get me out of here or something like that against Houston on the sideline or something. But anyways, moving on.
All season long, there's been weird rumors coming out of that locker room. So it's interesting to speculate. Chargers, Raiders. Chargers might have something to play for here, depending on how the Steelers game goes. I think the Chargers, would you agree with this? If there's a team in the AFC playoff picture that you do want to play right now, it's probably the Texans because they're vulnerable with all their injuries on offense. So this is a situation where depending on how that Steelers game goes, the Chargers will have some motivation to beat the Raiders here and assure themselves a matchup with the Texans potentially. Could anybody even use the Chargers here? One person has the Chargers left. Ryan, for that one person, would you recommend the Chargers in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, again, and you can't wait until after the Saturday games, right? So that's a tricky one because, again, Jim Harbaugh is always going to be one of those that plays chess when everybody's playing checkers. If he has nothing to play for because of those games, he's absolutely going to rest guys. And again, if they lose, similar to I can't remember what other game, but the Eagles-Giants, the Raiders have a worse pick and they're less likely to get a quarterback. They might be out of that race already, but so I know Harbaugh has come and said, there's a chance that we can be a 5 instead of a 6 because then we can potentially host 2 playoff games, which yes, it's absolutely true. I think he would like to avoid having to play Baltimore in the first round and playing his brother. I think he'll do everything he can to stay away from that. The Raiders have looked better, right? I mean, they're a 2-game win streak, first one of the year. But let's not forget who it's been against, right? I mean, we've played maybe the worst 2 teams in the NFL in beating the Saints with their 4th quarterback and the Jaguars with their 2nd quarterback. So, and in both games, gross games, could have gone either way. So I'm excited to see this. I think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive battle. And if the Chargers decide that they want to win, they'll win. If they don't care, the Raiders absolutely will win because that's what the Raiders do. They put themselves in, unfortunate situations. And the talk will be, they won 3 games at the end of the year. Maybe Antonio Pierce saved his job. And in reality, now we're picking 10th in the NFL draft, and we're going to have to pick a defensive tackle or something.
And if anybody has any questions for Ryan, he does the pregame shows for the Raiders, so feel free to jump in on the comments. Ask either of us any questions as we move along. Next game I want to talk about is the Colts-Jacks game. As you saw, there was 5 people where the Colts are their best available option this week. So I want to get into that game. Before we do, I want to ask people, go ahead and hit that like button, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. That helps get the show out into the people's algorithms, helps spread the word about this show, helps spread the word about Circa Survivor. Colts at Jags. Actually, is that game at Jags? I got to check and see where that's at. But Colts coming off of this absolutely ugly performance that I could probably spend an hour talking about because it hurt me last week, Ryan. The tackling on defense was bad. They had a missed field goal. They gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown. If you have the Colts left against the Jaguars, it's not a bad spot to be in the last week because we're talking about, a favorite over a field goal, 5-ish point favorite. It's a nice hedge spot for the last week of the season, but you can't feel that good about trusting a Colts team that when they had something on the line last week, they shit the bed. Now, without something on the line this week against the Jaguars, you're going to trust them with potentially $14.266 million on the line. Would you trust the Colts here in this spot, Ryan?
Don't do it. Don't do it. If last week taught us anything, the Colts, the rotating quarterback situation has been a disaster. It is in Indy, so no weather implications, but Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the best player on the field. I think he's better than Jonathan Taylor already. And he was a one-man wrecking crew last week. Granted, it's against the Titans. I get it, but the Titans have a pretty good defense. I think the line, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but I think the line's down under 5 now. I think it's like 4.5 or something like that.
I'll look it up now, I'll let you know.
And, the Jacksonville, again, I watched them 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, and they haven't given up. Their coach is coaching for Doug Peterson's coaching for his coaching life. And, they're not in the picture for getting a quarterback. So there's not a lot of people that are saying to tank. I don't know. Mac Jones had a better game last week. I mean, he's still so immobile. It's hard to watch him, but I think he was 15 for 22 with 2 touchdowns. And again, having Brian Thomas on the team is a difference maker. Similar to Malik Neighbors, single-handedly beating Indy. You don't think his college teammate Brian Thomas is like, oh, you ate, I'm gonna go eat against this defense. And so I think it's gonna be a one-possession game. It's a division matchup, and Jacksonville, if they could take anything, why not take a 2-game winning streak into the offseason and shore up what you need to, fix your coaching staff, things like that, and move forward.
So the point spread is still 5 at most places. There's a couple of rare 4.5s in the market right now, but most places still have it at 5. Here's my concern for the Colts. You want to take a guess how many touches Jonathan Taylor has had the last 2 weeks?
44.
63 the last 2 weeks. And we saw him, I believe, what I saw with my eyes was him get tired at the end of that game and him get a little banged up at the end of that game. He didn't have the same burst in his step. So, and he was coming off of a 29 carry game. So I think with a game that doesn't have any playoff implications, why push this guy? Why push this guy and have another 25, 30 carries in this game? Let Jonathan Taylor off easily. This game means absolutely nothing. I would be really concerned about the Colts, but this is what we can't do to our listeners, Ryan. There's 5 people who the Colts, based on the point spread, are their best option. So if we're going to tell them to stay away, we got to give them another option for another point spread that's lower. So keep that in mind. I know you said you don't like the Broncos. I don't think that anybody has the Broncos available, so skip that. But as we move along, you let me know what you'd take instead.
Seattle.
Woo! Seattle against Jimmy Garoppolo and the Rams backups. You like Seattle in that spot. Let's jump to that game. Tell me why you like Seattle there.
Well, again, unless Sean McVay is playing possum, right? Which, again, could be possible because they actually can move they're not locked into their spot. Correct, Tony? Like the
Correct.
Rams.
Correct.
Yeah.
They have seed implications, but let me jump in here for a second. He's been in this exact spot twice before, including 2019, where he was already locked into the playoffs, but there were seed implications, and he rested his guys. So I don't think he's playing possum. This is who Sean McVay is. He does it in the preseason even. He prioritizes rest. He prioritizes player safety, if you will. His guys not getting hurt. He'd rather have a tougher game next week and have his guys healthy. That's who Sean McVay is. So there's no doubt in my mind he really is resting guys this week.
And you got to beat them all anyway if you want to go to the Super Bowl. Plus, they already played Minnesota, right? They beat Minnesota at home. If Minnesota beats Detroit, then they'd have Detroit. And, Detroit is absolutely dangerous, but they're out. Absolutely. I'm saying if the Rams were to lose, they'd be the 4th and they'd play Detroit the 5. And Detroit's absolutely susceptible because their defense is just so decimated. So that would be 100-99 type of game. It'd be really fun. But yeah, I think they're going to put zero emphasis on winning and 100% emphasis on to staying healthy. We see only one person has Seattle, so it's kind of a moot point. But again, we're down to a situation, Tony, where there aren't a ton of great options. And if you don't have Tampa, for example, if you don't have Green Bay, then you're. But again, I do not like Indy, Jacksonville. I know people are going to be on it, and that's fine. But let's talk about that after or on Saturday night or whenever, and have that conversation because that really, really scares me. Bob Renfro, Happy New Year to you as well.
How about the Cardinals? 49ers, banged up offensive line. They announced today it's going to be Josh Dobbs at quarterback, no Brock Purdy. That defense is very banged up. Fred Warner's playing on a bad ankle. They got no other linebackers on the roster besides him that have, much talent at all. Would you trust the Cardinals? Because I think a lot of people do have them available. 13 people. So there are surely going to be some people that have the Cardinals and the Colts. Would you trust Arizona instead of Indianapolis here?
That's a great question. I would trust Arizona more than Indianapolis. Do I trust them fully? No, just because I was impressed with how well San Francisco stood toe-to-toe with Detroit. And I know you watched it with vested interest because you're a diehard 49ers fan. The 49ers still have even though they're decimated on the offensive side of the football, they have so many guys that, especially at the specialty or the wide receiver position, like Ricky Pearsall, that guy can play. Debo, he can play. Like Kittle's maybe having his best season or one of his best seasons of his career. Dobbs, I watched him with Minnesota, and he, with the right offense around him, he actually played really well. He tailored, he kind of petered out at the end. The one thing I will say about Arizona is they are not going to go lightly, though. I feel like they're going to treat this more like a playoff game than San Francisco. So that's why I like them to win. I think Kyler, is really. I mean, he might have gotten the new Call of Duty though for Christmas. You just never know. But no, I think they're going to take it really, really seriously at home, wanting to go home with a win. I do like them, especially putting a quarterback in on a short week to finish the season. That's tough. That's heavy lifting. And I think Brock Purdy is vastly underrated, and people don't recognize like how perfect he fits that offense.
A couple injuries to be aware of for this game. Nick Bosa didn't practice today. George Kittle didn't practice today. Deebo Samuel didn't practice today. Isaac Guerrero, 49ers, like 4th string running back, practiced in full today. So at least they'll have him. James Conner, it's not looking like he's going to play in this game. Didn't practice today either. So just be aware of that. But if all those guys that I mentioned, Deebo, Bosa, and Kittle, were to all be ruled out, and you'll know that information before you put your pick in, on top of all these other injuries that we already know the 49ers have. I'm talking about Trent Williams. I'm talking about, obviously, Brock Purdy. Let's see if Charvarius Ward plays in this game. He missed the last game. I mean, this could be like a Cardinals mostly starters against mostly 49ers backups.
Yeah,
game could have a preseason feel to it.
What's the point for San Fran to play some of these guys, right? There's just not a lot.
None whatsoever. There's a little bit of, player development. Like, let's see what we got out of Ricky Pearsall, stuff like that. I will say this, though. Revenge game for Josh Dobbs against the Arizona Cardinals.
The guys play for every single team. You can't have a revenge game if you play for 31 of the 32 teams, Tony.
Every game's a revenge game for Josh Dobbs. That's hilarious. All right, moving on here. Eagles, Giants. Let's pull this up. Let's see if anybody even is lucky enough to have the Eagles available here. What do we got for – nobody has Philly, so we will not spend any time on this. But would you – if you were Sirianni, would you start Saquon Barkley?
I would completely leave it up to him. I do think that, in this day and age, because they've added games and we're going to add another game here in a year or two, right, to make it 18 regular season games, like records are becoming, just to me a footnote. Like Eric Dickerson, I think OJ did it first in like 14 games. Didn't he have 2,000 yards in 14 games?
Yeah.
And then Eric Dickerson obviously has the record in 16 games. To do it in 17 games, yes, it's pretty awesome. But if I'm a running back and I have the opportunity to take a bye week going into the playoffs and potentially winning a Super Bowl, that's absolutely like, hey, remember when you won the Super Bowl and you ran for 2,000 yards? As opposed to, you remember that you were the rushing record and then you were, you had a deep thigh bruise for that first round playoff game and you lost, so I would leave it up to Saquon but I would come to a decision. I think they made the right decision in sitting him, which they have announced formally.
And I think that you'll agree with me here. The NFC is wide open. So the idea that sitting Saquon can help you get to the Super Bowl is very realistic and very much on the table. So
you can also lose your job, Tony, if you play him and he gets a season-ending injury.
No shit. That's a good call. That's a very good call. Bills, Patriots here. At first, they were saying Drake May probably wasn't going to play. Now it sounds like Drake May is going to play. Let me see if anybody even has Buffalo. If it's even, nobody's got Buffalo. So we won't spend our time talking about this one.
Tony, I have to imagine Bills aren't going to play their guys. This is their bye week. I know they haven't really talked about it, Sean McDonough, but I would be shocked if any of those guys play. I don't know if I'd have the balls to pick the Patriots.
I like the Patriots from a sports betting perspective outside of Survivor. I like the Patriots money line. I got the Patriots +3 just because I know there's draft implications and they might be tanking and all that, but they played the Bills really tough 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they're going to be going up against even more backups in this game. I do think they want to finish the season strong, the Patriots. Maybe Gerard Mayo, maybe this is his chance to prove something, to ownership there. He might be on the hot seat for, being a one-and-done coach. We'll see. We got a comment coming in here. Bob, I think this was the reaction to the Happy New Year from you there, Ryan. Moving on. We've got Lions-Vikings. Okay, Survivor aside, what a freaking game this is going to be. Sunday Night Football. The difference between the 1 seed and the 5 seed, Ryan, this is the difference between home field advantage and a bye week, or you lose, and next week you got to go on the road, most likely to Tampa Bay, maybe Atlanta. That is huge.
Or LA.
And we've got 2 teams with explosive offenses. This could be a 34-31 game. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Let's see if anybody – I'm pretty sure Detroit's already used up, right? Detroit's used up. Minnesota, 1 person left. So we don't have much time to talk about this, but we don't need to spend much time talking about this. But do you agree this is going to be fun as hell to watch?
Yeah, first time they played, it was a 2-point game, back and forth, obviously. Vikings jumped out 10-0. Lions put up 21 in the second quarter. It was 21-10 and a half, and then they just kind of went back and forth. But I think it's going to be kind of the same thing. I would put the over-under at 60 points. And, I could see a 35-31 type of victory. I think Minnesota does win this one.
All right, Ryan, this one's interesting. You said you don't feel good about the Colts. Would you take the Bengals
0%.
over the Steelers instead of the Colts? So you'd prefer the Colts than the Bengals if you had to? Those 2 choices. Okay.
Yes, because I won't know what the Steelers, I think Mike Tomlin's just the type of guy. First of all, good luck betting against the Steelers to lose 3 in a row. Like they're they've had an absolute gauntlet, which we knew coming into the season, like the way they finished the season, they had a really, really tough. And it's not like the Bengals are a really fun story because they're really fun to watch, but they're not that good of a team. Let's call it like it is. Like Joe Burrow might be the best quarterback in the world right now. They're not that good a team. They got 3 guys that are playing lights out. And, so I don't know. I think if regardless of if the Steelers have anything to play for, I think they're going to play them tough. The Bengals have hurt you all year. Are you really going to count on them after they killed everybody week 1? Are you going to put your $14.2 million on the line? Does anybody have them? I'm sorry, I didn't look at that.
Yeah, look, I did see. I think 1 or 2 people had 2 people have Cincinnati.
And how about Pittsburgh? Anybody have Pittsburgh?
I can't imagine someone taking a dog though. But we've got 7 on Pittsburgh.
Okay. Yeah.
Next game up on the board, we've got Commanders, Cowboys. Nobody has the Commanders available. A couple people have the Cowboys available, but I can't imagine. You think people would trust Washington here in this spot?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah. Talk to me.
Well,
so that crazy game from earlier this year that we were talking to NFL Wise Guys about earlier in the show.
I mean, nobody has them, so it's not necessarily that important. But Washington, they're jockeying for position and want to end on a high note. Like they didn't play that great of football. Michael Penix looked really good against them. Jane Daniels obviously will be the best player on the field there. And look for Terry McLaurin to have a bounce back game. They're going to shadow him with Bland, but I think I like that matchup all day. And I think the Commanders are they're a really dangerous team. They could be a one and done, but I could see them going to the NFC Championship game as well and losing. Like I would absolutely expect them to beat the Packers, for example, in the first round of the playoffs. If they played them, I would expect them to beat the Rams. And so it's going to be fun.
Has Cliff Kingsbury silenced the critics who said this guy always chokes? I know he's not the head coach, he's the OC, but there was a point where the Commanders were starting to lull a little bit, and people were saying, oh, Cliff Kingsbury, here he goes again, falling off the cliff, no pun intended. Has he silenced his critics?
I mean, I don't know if he's silenced his critics, but, it's a long season, and rookie quarterbacks that get thrown in from week 1 are going to have some ebbs and flows. I think Jane Daniels actually has limited those, and a lot of that's because of coaching.
Yeah, and good call from House here. By the way, we know House is in the house, and he's still alive in Circa Survivor. If there's anybody else still alive in Circa Survivor, say hello. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this week, but more importantly, congratulations for still being alive. Next up, Dolphins, Jets. Could you imagine someone doing this right at Circa Survivor? There's no freaking way, right?
I don't think so. I will say a little tasty nugget. Aaron Rodgers said that this absolutely, now he's always dramatic, but he said this absolutely could be his final game ever. I have a hard time believing the egotistical Aaron Rodgers would actually end on a year like this. I think him and Devontae are going to go to a team like the Colts, for example, next year and just like try to tear it up. But with that being said, that's why I would be hesitant on picking the Dolphins, for example. But it's a division matchup. The Dolphins have an outside chance of sneaking in backdoor style, so they're going to be all hands on deck. I'm not sure what Tua's situation is. Do you know, Tony?
This week, I'm not sure. I know he was out last week. I'm not sure. I haven't seen practice reports from today from the Dolphins.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm staying away. I just don't see any point.
Yeah. And then our last game here, Texans, Titans. I can't imagine anybody would be trusting either of these teams in this game. I do think the Texans, of all the teams that don't have anything to play for, I think they have the most to play for, if that makes sense, of the teams who don't have playoff implications in their games, because they got to get right. They got to go into the playoffs feeling good, and they just don't right now, especially in the offensive side of the ball. So I'm expecting an inspired effort here from the Texans, but just can't imagine that anybody, nor should you, would be, on Texans here. And look at that. Nobody has the Texans available anyways, so we don't even need to.
Real quick about the Miami. They had their left tackle, Terran Armstead's out. Jordan Poyer missed practice. Anthony Walker missed practice. Then they had Tyreek Hill, Tua, Jalen Waddle, and Javon Holland were all limited participants today.
Good stuff here. And I had some practice info for people that are on the Falcons. The Panthers are really banged up. These are the guys who missed practice today. Linebacker DJ Wanham, cornerback Mike Jackson. They were out for non-injury related reasons. And then all these guys were out. J.C. Horn, Robert Hunt, Josie Jewell, Ashawn Robinson, Lonnie Johnson, and their safety, Nick Scott. I think that dude's a backup, though. We're all out today. So you're feeling even better about the Panthers with that injury news. Of course, these guys could come back and practice in full tomorrow, so monitor their practice participation during the week. But that's a long list of injuries for a team that already has a bunch of guys that we know are already ruled out, like Chuba Hubbard. And let me tell you, that Panthers team, you started to get a little bit of hope because they were looking a little better. They turned the corner. Bryce Young is playing better. I think Chuba Hubbard is such a big part of that offense that without him last week, I think that made a huge difference. Miles Sanders may come back this week. First time in a long time he's been on the field, so that's worth noting. But I think the Falcons are in a pretty good spot. A couple weeks ago, I was like, if I'm alive in week 18, I don't want to be on the Falcons. I want to root for a high number of people on the Falcons because I think that's a realistic upset spot. My feelings about that have changed a bit, and I could see the Falcons running away with this one.
Last time these two played, it was really close at halftime. Andy Dalton was the quarterback, and Deontay Johnson actually had a big game for Carolina. Obviously not there anymore, but Atlanta rushed for 198 yards. So just something to be mindful of. As we say, end of the year, defense and running game travels. So.
And, the Falcons' pass rush has gotten a lot better. I don't know why, but they're playing a lot better on defense, and they're getting to the quarterback more, and that was a huge weakness of them earlier this year. So, Ryan, I think we've done all we can. If you guys can, again, please hit the like button, share, retweet if you're on Twitter. This is one of our last shows. Ryan and I put this together, honestly, just being transparent, like 2 weeks before the season started. We're like, hey, let's do a podcast. It came together really well. We've had some great guests this year, had a ton of good interaction with you guys. I love that so many of our listeners got really far in Circa Survivor. A couple of them are still alive. So we're going to keep this going. We're going to be back next year. We'll be back Saturday as well with the reveal for the selection counts. That'll be our last show of the season. This is our second last show of the season. But again, if you guys can like, share, subscribe if you haven't already on YouTube, that's a big help for us. We really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be at Circa for our last show, Tony, on Saturday. And thank you to everybody for taking time out of your day to listen to us. And Tony and I are really good friends. I know that we don't always seem like it, but this developed from a friendship and has really spawned to, or it started working together with Oddshark, and it's turned into a friendship and now a pretty cool podcast. So thanks to everybody and good luck.
Yeah, well said. Good luck, especially those of you who are still alive. Soak this up. This could be the biggest day of your life for some of you out there. Really, really exciting time. Say hi to Ryan if you see him at Circa. Take care, everybody. Enjoy it.